The void was never meant for mortal eyes. It was an endless ocean of madness, where currents of unreality howled against the hulls of ships like storms clawing at fragile vessels. Even the warships of the Imperium, blessed and armored, traveled through the immaterium with prayers etched into their plating and choirs chanting to drown the whispers of demons. Yet into this storm drifted something wholly alien, something that belonged to neither chaos nor the Emperor. The Predator ship was small, a blade-shaped silhouette sliding between tides of warped energy. Unlike human vessels, it carried no Geller field, no prayers, no psychic ward. Its shielding was born of technology older than Imperial archives could fathom, crafted by a race that had hunted across galaxies before mankind had mastered fire. Where Imperial ships cut through the warp like lumbering fortresses, this vessel moved like a shadow, slipping between storms, silent and invisible. It was guided not by navigation charts or astropathic signals, but by resonance, a vibration echoing through the currents of unreality. To the Predator's senses, it was a song of war. The psychic roars of humanity's warriors bled through the warp, loud and unending, like the howls of titans. Where others would hear madness, the Predator heard challenge. Where others would flee, it advanced. Inside the vessel, ritual was already underway. The Predator stood in darkness lit only by the glow of trophies. Skulls lined the chamber walls, suspended from chains, their bones gleaming with age and battle scars. Some belonged to Xeno's creatures from galaxies unknown, others to towering beasts whose names were lost to time. Each trophy was polished, honored, a reminder of battles won and prey conquered. The hunter moved with deliberate purpose, sharpening blades against stone, the scrape echoing through the chamber like a predator's heartbeat. It was not fear that guided these preparations, but reverence. The hunt was sacred. Its armor, blackened and scarred from 100 battles, was ritually anointed with oils. Its mask, fanged and adorned with glyphs, was lowered reverently over its face. The hiss of locking seals sounded less like machinery and more like a ritual vow. The warp screamed outside, flashes of light bending into impossible geometries, but within the chamber, silence reigned. The Predator stretched its claws across its armory, plasma casters humming with restrained fire, wrist blades gleaming with ceremonial engravings, and spears crafted from alloys so ancient they seemed older than stars. Each weapon was tested, calibrated, and blessed with a guttural series of clicks and growls, a hunter's litany. Then, the signal grew stronger. The psychic resonance of the Imperium bled through the veil of unreality. It was not a single voice, but a choir of millions. Humans shouting in prayer, Marines roaring in fury, the faint ripple of the Emperor's shadow pressing against the fabric of the warp. To the Predator, it was intoxicating. Here lay prey, not just strong, but relentless. Here lay warriors who saw themselves as gods. The lure was irresistible. The ship shuddered. Warp storms lashed around it, yet the Predator's vessel carved a path through, slipping from unreality into real space with a soundless rupture. The stars reformed, distant suns flaring like embers. Before it stretched a barren imperial planet, its surface marked by cathedrals and garrisons, its skies patrolled by orbital satellites and imperial frigates. To the Imperium, it was just another shrine world, one among countless. To the Predator, it was a hunting ground ripe with promise. The vessel descended silently, cloaking fields wrapping it in invisibility. No auger detected it, no human eye glimpsed its shape. To the Imperium, nothing had changed. To the hunter, everything had. It stood within the chamber as atmosphere alarms hissed, the ramp lowering onto alien soil. The Predator inhaled deeply, tasting the planet's air as though sampling its prey's scent. It marked its armor with blood sigils, dragged a claw across its mask, and stepped into a world that had never known a hunter such as this. The hunt had begun. The planet hung beneath its star like an ember in the void, its surface scarred yet sanctified. To the Imperium, it was not simply a world, it was a shrine. Its mountains had been carved into monuments, its valleys filled with relics, and its cities crowned with cathedrals so vast they rivaled fortresses. Towers of black stone and stained glass reached toward the heavens, their spires tipped with aquilers that caught the light of dawn and cast it across barren plains. From orbit, the world gleamed with the marks of devotion. Great circles of chapels and pilgrimage routes etched into the land, visible even from space. Here, faith was not a private matter. It was survival. Every street echoed with chants to the Emperor, every home housed icons of his visage, and every family raised its children to kneel before golden altars. The citizenry lived in ritual rhythm, work, prayer, rest, all bound by obedience to creed and fear of deviation. For in the Imperium, faith was both shield and chain. The threat of heresy lingered in every whispered doubt, the fear of Xenos or demon in every shadow. To question was to invite suspicion. To falter was to invite death. Yet, despite the weight of piety, beneath the surface ran a current of quiet dread. The people of this world had never seen the horrors of the galaxy firsthand, but they had heard them in sermons. The orc warbands tearing across systems, the tyrannid swarms consuming planets whole, the chaos warhosts pouring from the Eye of Terror. They lived in fear of a storm that might one day break upon them. That storm now approached, but not in the form they expected. On this day, the rituals of devotion were interrupted by a thunderous sound. A starship broke through the atmosphere, its descent marked by the roar of engines that shook the ground and rattled cathedral windows. The people did not run, they fell to their knees. For this, there was no invasion fleet. It was salvation incarnate. The Adeptus Astartes had arrived. From the heavens descended a company of space marines, their drop craft searing across the skies like meteors. When they emerged upon the landing fields, their presence was overwhelming. Each warrior towered above mortal men, encased in ceramite armor painted in the colors of their chapter. Their every movement radiated power. To the citizens, they were gods, avatars of the Emperor's will, walking among the frail and the faithful. Chants rose, voices trembling with awe and devotion as the Marines strode past. The Astartes paid little attention to the worshippers. Their duty was not to bask in reverence, but to inspect, to safeguard, to prepare. Their eyes scanned the horizon for weakness, their minds trained for battle even in moments of peace. For them, this was routine. A shrine world was to be maintained, fortified, and kept in the Emperor's light. They marched with the discipline of centuries, their bolters slung across their armored frames, their helmets glowing with artificial lenses that pierced the darkness. Among them walked chaplains and tech marines, their armor etched with relics and mechanical servos. A librarian's hood concealed psychic eyes, which probed the currents of reality for hints of corruption. The captain, a figure of grim authority, issued orders with words like thunder, his voice amplified by vox grills. For the Marines, this was ritual as much as war. Every inspection a chance to remind humanity of its place beneath the Emperor's gaze. Every march a sermon of strength. The contrast was stark. Where the Predator's creed was solitary, primal, and silent, the creed of the Imperium was communal, disciplined, and deafening. The Predator marked its armor with blood runes, the Marines engraved theirs with prayers. The Predator hunted for trophies, the Marines fought for faith. Two traditions, both unbreakable, both absolute, were now poised on the same world. The citizens did not know it yet, but beneath their hymns and tears of joy, destiny stirred. Their planet, so long a place of quiet reverence, was about to become a battlefield. The Predator had already entered their skies, cloaked in silence, its alien rituals completed. As the Marines conducted their inspections, unaware of the shadow watching from above, the first threads of an inevitable collision were woven. The stage was set. A shrine world of fire and faith, watched over by demigods, about to be tested by a hunter whose creed recognized no emperor and no divinity. The clash would not be between heretic and faithful, or man and beast. It would be between two codes, one of honor, one of devotion, colliding in a crucible that would shake even the strongest belief. The forest was still, save for the crunch of boots on gravel paths and the faint clatter of lasguns. An Imperial patrol moved in formation, a squad of mortal soldiers wrapped in flak armor, their eyes scanning shadows they did not trust. Shrine worlds often birth paranoia. The sermons of the ecclesiarchy filled every ear with stories of heretics and Xenos lurking just beyond sight. Tonight, their fears would prove true. Unseen above, the Predator crouched among the branches, cloaked in refracted light. To the patrol, the forest was empty. To the hunter, it was alive with heat signatures. Through its mask, the world glowed in gradients of crimson and gold, the soldiers' heartbeats pulsing like beacons in the dark. It tilted its head, studying them not with curiosity, but calculation. They were not worthy prey, too fragile, too predictable, yet every hunt required its first blood. Clicks and guttural growls rumbled from its throat, a predator's hymn. The wrist blades slid free with a metallic hiss, gleaming in moonlight. The patrol continued forward, unaware that the air itself now held death. The first strike came without warning. A soldier at the rear vanished into the trees, pulled upward with such speed that his muffled cry was cut short. His comrades spun around, torches sweeping the canopy, but nothing answered. They shouted challenges, their voices quivering with fear, until a body dropped among them, headless, stripped, flayed. Panic erupted. Lasgun fire tore into the trees, bolts of light stabbing blindly into shadows. The predator moved among them like a phantom cloak shimmering as it weaved between bursts of gunfire. A shoulder-mounted plasma caster hummed, then fired. One soldier exploded into flame, his scream cut off as his armor melted into slag. Another tried to run, but a spear whistled through the dark, pinning him to a trunk with bone-cracking force. The survivors huddled together, their discipline crumbling into terror. They shouted for the Emperor, for aid, for their sergeant. None answered. The predator dropped into their circle, cloak shimmering away to reveal its towering form. Mandibles spread wide in a guttural roar, wrist blades flashing as it cut down 2 men in a single sweeping strike. The last soldier raised his lasgun, firing until the charge pack hissed empty. He barely had time to scream before claws tore through his chest. Silence followed. Smoke drifted through the clearing, mingling with the copper tang of blood. The predator stood tall, chest heaving, not in exhaustion but in ritual satisfaction. It gathered the skulls of the fallen, carving them free with surgical precision. Each was cleaned in moments, flesh torn away, bone polished with practiced efficiency. The trophies were hung from its armor, swaying with each movement, symbols of honor, the first offerings of the hunt. The bodies were left flayed and displayed, arranged deliberately to send a message. To the predator, this was a sacred tradition. To the Imperium, it would be terror incarnate. The patrol had been reduced not to casualties, but to warnings, a silent declaration that something unseen now stalked their world. By dawn, rumors spread among the local garrison. Soldiers whispered of a demon in the woods, an invisible killer that struck without warning. Chaplains dismissed the talk as fear, yet commanders quietly doubled patrols. Reports of flayed corpses reached the ears of the Space Marines. To them, such slaughter was not random but deliberate, the mark of an enemy both intelligent and dangerous. The Marines began to prepare. They did not yet know the nature of this Xenos, nor its creed, but the hunter had drawn first blood, and the ultimate prey was about to take notice. Dawn broke pale and cold across the shrine world, its light falling upon silence. The patrol that had left the fortress the previous night had not returned. Where once the citizens might have whispered prayers and hoped for delay, now they cowered, for the truth lay scattered across the forest floor. The first reports of flayed corpses reached the Astartes, and the Space Marines came to see for themselves. A squad of warriors advanced into the woods, ceramite boots sinking into the ashen soil left from earlier skirmishes. They were not like mortal soldiers, trembling before whispers of ghosts. Each Marine strode with the certainty of one who carried the Emperor's will in his veins. Their armor was painted with purity seals, their bolters gripped like extensions of their own flesh. The forest seemed to retreat before them, shadows trembling as if aware of what walked beneath their boughs. The first corpse was found hanging from a tree. A man stripped of his skin, skull torn from his spine, lasgun still clutched in stiffening fingers. One Marine removed his helm, augmetic eyes narrowing as he inspected the cauterized edges of the wound. "Not a blade of iron," he muttered, voice like gravel. "Plasma. Precision cuts." Another knelt, scanning the ground with Yano-honed senses. Footprints, faint, heavy, deliberate. Too light for a beast, too clean for a human. The mark seemed to vanish between steps, as though the killer had disappeared into the air itself. The chaplain spoke next, his Crozius resting at his side, his skull helm glinting in the morning light. "This is a trial," he intoned, voice resonant and unyielding. "The Emperor sends us tests of faith, and the weak are the first to fall. We stand as his wrath." But the captain was less moved by sermons. He crouched beside the corpse, studying the clean separation of flesh from bone. This is not chaos, no warp taint, no ritual of heresy. This is the method. This is deliberate. His words carried the weight of grim fascination. He had seen orcs tear men apart, tyrannids drain them to husks, demons reduce them to madness. But this was different. This was surgical. The squad moved deeper. They found more bodies arranged like warnings, each missing its skull, each carved with terrifying precision. Melted craters in the soil showed plasma fire, But no weapon of the Imperium left burned so concentrated, so silent. The Marines gathered evidence, marking locations for tech Marines to scan. Each detail confirmed what they already felt in their bones. A new enemy had arrived. Unseen above them, the Predator crouched in the canopy, watching. Its masked lenses shifted through spectrums, studying the towering figures below. These were no fragile soldiers like those it had already claimed. Their heat signatures pulsed with unnatural intensity, their movements coordinated, their senses sharpened beyond the human norm. The Predator tilted its head, mandibles twitching with something akin to excitement. These were prey worthy of ritual. A Marine turned suddenly, helm optics flaring as if he sensed something. The Predator froze, cloak flickering for a heartbeat before stabilizing. It shifted silently through the trees, always just beyond sight, testing the patience of these warriors. It was rare for prey to feel the hunter's presence without seeing it. These ones, it realized, might be different. Back on the ground, the captain ordered a cordon established. Patrols would double. Auspex scans would sweep the forests. The chaplain began litanies of fortitude, preparing the garrison for trial. And the librarian, hooded and silent, reached out with psychic senses, only to feel nothing. A void, a blank, as though something walked just beyond the veil of reality, present yet absent. The Marines marched back toward their fortress, their resolve sharpened, their curiosity tempered by dread. They did not yet know the shape of their foe, but they knew this. It was cunning, it was precise, and it was watching. The silent war had begun. Night cloaked the forests in silence, broken only by the disciplined movements of a Space Marine scout squad. Clad in lighter armor than their power-armored brethren, the scouts moved with a predator's grace, their camel cloaks blending them into the undergrowth. They were not raw recruits. Each was already gene-forged, trained in the arts of reconnaissance, sabotage, and silent death. Where mortal men stumbled through shadows, scouts thrived. Yet tonight, another predator stalked them. High in the branches, cloaked in bending light, the alien hunter watched. Its vision shifted across spectrums, isolating the brilliant heat signatures of the scouts against the cool forest. Each Marine radiated like a furnace, their twin hearts and enhanced physiology glowing with unnatural intensity. The Predator's mandibles clicked in anticipation. These were not fragile prey. These were titans disguised in mortal form. Worthy prey, the hunter struck first. A plasma bolt cut through the night, shrieking like thunder. One scout barely rolled aside, his cloak igniting as the beam tore a glowing scar across the ground. The squad reacted instantly, dropping into cover with inhuman speed, bolters raised, eyes scanning. No panic, no disorder, only precision. "Contact!" one barked through the vox. Xeno's weapon, unknown signature. Bolt of fire ripped into the tree line, explosive rounds detonating against bark and stone. Shards rained down, but the Predator was already gone, leaping from branch to branch in near silence. Its cloak flickered, bending reality around it, but a Marine's enhanced optics caught the distortion. "Movement 9 o'clock, he growled, losing a volley that shredded foliage and left sparks bouncing from something unseen. The Predator answered with speed. It dropped into their formation like a thunderbolt, wrist blades gleaming as it slashed across one Marine's chest. Ceramite armor screeched but held, sparks flying. The scout staggered but did not fall. The others closed ranks immediately, bolters snapping up, chain blades revving. For the first time in this new galaxy, the Predator felt resistance. A scout lunged, combat blade meeting alien steel. Sparks showered as the weapons locked, strength straining against strength. The Predator's mandibles flared wide, emitting a guttural roar that shook the leaves. The Marine snarled prayers to the Emperor, driving his blade harder, forcing the alien back. Another Marine swung his chain blade in a vicious arc, biting into the Predator's shoulder and spraying IQI into the night. The hunter recoiled, cloak sputtering, body revealed in full monstrous glory. The scouts did not falter. They pressed forward with surgical precision, firing point blank, slashing with brutal coordination. One round tore into the Predator's thigh, another glanced off its mask, sending a shower of sparks. In retaliation, the Predator unleashed its ferocity. Plasma bolts erupted at close range, one Marine collapsing in fire and smoke, his chest reduced to ruin. Wrist blades slashed in a deadly dance, cutting through cloak and flesh alike. But these prey did not scatter. Even wounded, they fought as one. Their formation was unbreakable, their faith their shield. And for the Predator, that changed everything. The hunt was no longer effortless. It was a war. Bleeding from its shoulder and thigh, the predator realized this test had gone far enough. It lost a raw, half-rage, half-exhilaration before detonating a flash charge. The explosion lit the forest in searing white, stunning the scouts' optics for precious seconds. When their vision cleared, the hunter was gone, vanished into the tree line, leaving only blood and smoke behind. The scouts regrouped, kneeling by their fallen brother. His body, still smoldering, was lifted with reverence. Their leader's voice cut through the static. This is no beast. This is no heretic. This is a hunter. Back in the darkness, the predator limped through the undergrowth, ichor dripping into the soil. Pain coursed through its veins, but it reveled in it. It had bled, yes, but that was the mark of a worthy hunt. The skulls of mortals meant little compared to the trophies these warriors could provide. Their discipline, their strength, their faith, they were unlike any prey it had faced across the stars. The hunter's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. This was no simple hunt. This was the trial of a lifetime, and far above, within their fortress, the Space Marines received the scout's report. The words carried weight even for demigods. A new Xenos stalked their world. A killer armed with weapons beyond Imperial design, cunning enough to wound even the Emperor's chosen. The war had escalated. The forest was quiet again, but silence no longer brought peace. It was the calm before a storm both sides could feel approaching. Deep within the wilderness, hidden among jagged cliffs and shadowed canopies, the predator crouched in its lair. Ichor still dripped from wounds carved into its flesh by marine blades. It hissed as talons probed the burns, but pain was no weakness, it was memory. Each scar became a story, each mark a testament to prey that had proved itself. With ritual precision, the hunter sealed the wounds, cauterizing them with heated steel, the smell of scorched flesh rising in the air. Its armor lay in pieces before it, scarred ceramic-like plates blackened with smoke and cracked by bolter fire. The predator lifted each fragment, marking it with blood sigils, clawing new runes of honor into its chestplate. These were not repairs born of desperation. They were acts of reverence. To bleed in battle was no shame. To endure was glory. Each glyph carved into armor was both a memory and a vow. This hunt would not end in retreat. It would end in triumph, or in a death worthy of song among its kind. Weapons followed the same ritual. Wrist blades were sharpened on stone until their edges gleamed like silver. The plasma caster was recalibrated, humming with lethal energy. Nets were tested, spears balanced, mines readied. The predator's mandibles clicked in rhythm, a guttural chant vibrating through its chest. Alone, it prepared with faith equal to the gods of men, but its faith was in the hunt itself. Across the valley, within fortress walls of adamantine and stone, the Space Marines also prepared. Their rites were not silent but thunderous, echoing through sacred halls. Tech Marines inspected bolters, chanting binary litanies as they oiled the machines of war. Chaplains strode among the brothers, crozius in hand, their words booming through vox systems. Sermons of fury, prayers of defiance. This Xenos tests the faithful. We will not bend. We will not falter. In his name, we strike. Marines knelt before their shrines, heads bowed beneath carved icons of the Emperor. They anointed their armor with sacred oils, carved fresh purity seals into the plates, and whispered oaths over each round of bolter ammunition. Where the predator sharpened steel in silence, the Marines blessed their weapons with fire and voice. Both sought perfection, one through ritual of solitude, the other through communion of brotherhood. The planet's mortals, too, felt the shadow of what was to come. Citizens whispered in the streets, locking doors at night as rumors spread of flayed corpses and unseen demons. Some turned to frantic prayer, others to trembling silence. Garrison commanders doubled patrols, though few soldiers believed they would survive if this new Xenos came for them. Fear coiled through the populace like smoke, unseen yet suffocating. In council chambers, the Marine captains stood over holo projections of the forest, analyzing patrol routes and attack patterns. The librarian spoke of shadows that resisted psychic sight, a blank spot in reality itself. Chaplains declared it a crucible. If they passed, they proved worthy of the Emperor's light. The captain simply nodded, his gauntleted finger stabbing at a red-marked sector. It will strike again. And when it does, we will be ready. Two forces, different in creed, yet alike in conviction, now stood at the edge of collision. The predator was no longer hunting for trophies alone. It was weaving the greatest hunt of its life, driven by obsession and honor. The Space Marines no longer treated the killings as rumors, they prepared to purge the intruder with the Emperor's fury. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the shadows, the predator roared into the night, a guttural call to the gods of the hunt. In the fortress, Marines answered with hymns, voices raised like thunder. The first true confrontation was no longer a question. It was an inevitability. The cathedral was once a monument to faith. Its towers had pierced the clouds, its stained glass had glowed with golden light, and its halls had echoed with hymns sung by thousands of voices. But war had scarred it. A bombardment from centuries past had reduced its roof to skeletal beams and its nave to crumbled stone. Now only silence remained, the silence of ghosts and prayers long extinguished. It was here the predator chose to make its stand. From the shattered rafters, the hunter waited. Its cloak shimmered faintly, its form bending to the broken geometry of stone and light. Beneath its feet, it had prepared traps with meticulous care, heat-masking decoys designed to mimic human signatures, nets strung between pillars, and mines buried beneath rubble. To the Marines who marched in, the cathedral seemed a ruin. To the predator, it was a hunting ground sharpened into a blade. The Astartes entered with the certainty of gods. 6 of them advanced in formation, ceramite boots striking the marble floor with a cadence like drums of war. Their bolters swept across every angle, Auspex scanners probing for motion. The captain's voice was steady, issuing orders with clipped precision. These were not mortals stumbling blindly into fear. These were warriors who had hunted demons and Xenos across countless worlds. And yet, the predator's patience was greater still. A decoy heat signature flickered in the nave. One Marine turned, bolter raising, but the false target collapsed into nothing as the mine detonated beneath his feet. Fire erupted, stone shattered, and the Marine was hurled back, his armor scorched. In that instant, the predator struck. Plasma fire lanced through colored glass, exploding it into shards of light. Another Marine staggered as his shoulder plate melted, black smoke curling skyward. The Astartes roared hymns of defiance. Bolters answered in thunderous volleys, shells slamming into pillars, tearing chunks of marble free. Statues of saints crumbled, their stone faces shattering under the storm. The cathedral itself became a weapon, fragments raining down like judgment. Above, the predator leapt between beams, cloak flickering as bolter fire chased it. It descended in silence, landing behind one Marine. Wrist blades punched through ceramite, slicing into flesh beneath. The Marine fell with a cry that became a vow. For the Emperor, his brothers responded instantly, fire saturating the area, forcing the predator back in a storm of explosive rounds. The battle became a dance of light and shadow. Plasma bolts seared the air, bolter rounds shattered columns, and stained glass rained down like shards of fire. The predator darted, vanished, and struck again, every movement precise, every blow deliberate. A second Marine fell, his throat cut clean, his skull claned even as his body still spasmed. The hunter hung the prize from its belt, mandibles clicking in triumph. But even triumph came at a cost. A bolter shell struck true, detonating against its chest. The predator roared as it staggered, armor cracking, ichor spilling onto the ruined floor. Above, a beam gave way under the strain of detonations. The entire section of roof collapsed, crashing down upon the hunter. Stone pinned it to the ground, its cloak flickering out as its body shuddered under the weight. For a moment, the Marines believed they had slain it. Yet the predator's will burned hotter than stone. With a guttural roar, it tore itself free, blood streaming, cloak sputtering back into place. The Marines advanced, their chant rising louder, their bolters reloading in perfect unison. The cathedral quaked as faith and fury clashed with primal cunning. The predator retreated into shadow once more, leaving behind shattered bodies and broken stone. 2 Marines lay fallen, their skulls already trophies claimed, but the hunter itself was wounded, its cloak unstable, its armor fractured. The price of this ambush was high. The cathedral, once a place of worship, had become a battlefield of legend, faith carved into marble, and blood staining its floor. The echoes of bolter fire and alien roars lingered in the air, a promise that this was only the beginning. Neither side had claimed victory. Both had tasted blood. The war between hunter and gods had begun in earnest. The forest clearing was hushed, bathed in the dim silver of a half-shattered moon. The Marines had spread out in disciplined patrols, sweeping for signs of the Xenos that haunted their world. But here, only one figure strode, his armor black and crimson, purity seals trailing from his pauldrons like banners of devotion. He was a captain of the Adeptus Astartes, a commander whose presence carried the weight of countless campaigns. Alone, he seemed invincible, a warrior who needed no retinue to remind the galaxy of his strength. And from the shadows, another warrior watched. The Predator had stalked this marine for hours, testing his movements, his rhythm, his responses to every subtle disturbance. Unlike mortals who startled at a snapped twig or a fleeting shadow, the captain remained unshaken. When the wind shifted, he adjusted his stance. When the trees creaked, he turned his helm, bolter raised, eyes scanning with mechanical precision. The Predator's mandibles clicked softly in appreciation. This one carried himself not as prey, but as a rival. The hunter lowered its mask, claws brushing across scarred metal before detaching it with a hiss. It dropped the helmet to the ground. To face a warrior such as this, cloaked and hidden, would dishonor the hunt. Tonight would not be assassination, it would be a trial. The captain halted, his vox filters catching the sound of shifting gravel. Bolter lifted, chainsword revved, his voice boomed into the night. "Face me, Xenos." The Predator answered with a roar, a guttural bellow that rattled branches. Then it lunged. The first strike came in a blur, wrist blades slashing against the teeth of the chainsword. Sparks erupted in a storm as alien alloy clashed with imperial steel, each blow resounding like thunder. The captain shoved forward, muscles enhanced by the Emperor's gene seed, strength multiplied by centuries of battle. Yet the Predator matched him, sinews straining, mandibles wide in feral exultation. A plasma bolt flashed from the Predator's shoulder cannon, slamming into the captain's shield. The ceramite glowed red, smoke curling, but the warrior did not falter. Instead, he advanced, blade roaring, each sweep a hymn of defiance. "For the Emperor!" he roared, voice vibrating like a bell through the clearing. The Predator countered with ferocity, leaping aside, then striking low. A knife drawn from its bandolier slashed across the Marine's thigh plate, gouging deep into armor but not flesh. The captain responded with his own combat blade, slamming it into the alien's shoulder, ichor spraying across the forest floor. Both roared in unison, the duel echoing like the clash of gods. The fight raged across the clearing, tearing soil and stone. The captain's chainsword chewed through a tree, splinters exploding into the night as the Predator vaulted over the ruin, landing behind him. The alien slashed high, the Marine spun, shield raised, blocking the blow in a burst of sparks. A bolter round fired point-blank into the Predator's chest, staggering it, but not felling it. The hunter responded with a brutal headbutt, mandibles cutting into ceramite, forcing the captain to stumble. Blood and ichor mixed on the ground. Both combatants were wounded, armor cracked, weapons sparking. And still they fought. For every strike of alien steel, the Marine answered with imperial fury. For every slash of chainsword, the Predator countered with cunning. Neither yielded. Each saw in the other a reflection of their own creed. One bound by divine duty, the other by the honor of the hunt. At last, both warriors broke apart, chests heaving, weapons lowered just enough to acknowledge stalemate. The Predator's mandibles clicked slowly, a sound that was neither mockery nor threat, but recognition. The captain raised his chainsword in salute, its teeth still dripping with alien blood. For a moment, Predator and prey stood as equals. Then, almost as one, they withdrew. The Predator slipped into the trees, cloak flickering back to life, leaving droplets of ichor in its wake. The captain watched until the forest swallowed it whole, then turned back toward his brothers, wounds burning but spirit unbroken. Neither had won, neither had lost, but both knew this duel was unfinished. The forest lay shattered by fire and fury. Smoke curled from craters, stone lay broken, and blood stained the earth where gods and hunters had crossed blades. Into the silence limped the Predator, its cloak flickering in and out, its body carved with deep wounds. Bolter shells had cracked its chest plate, a chainsword had bitten into its shoulder, and ichor dripped steadily onto the ground. Yet its mandibles spread wide in something close to satisfaction. Pain was proof. These enemies had earned the right to wound it. It retreated into shadow, vanishing into caverns beneath the ruined cathedral. There, in the dark, it tended to its injuries. Heated metal sealed torn flesh, the hiss of burning ichor echoing against stone. Bones were splintered, armor plates repaired with crude but effective bindings. Yet more than the wounds, it was the trophies it carried that pressed heavily upon it. 2 marine skulls, massive compared to those of mortal men, hung freshly stripped and polished. They gleamed with a light of triumph and of warning. Each was a prize of immeasurable honor, but each was also a weight, a reminder of the price paid for them. Far above, the Space Marines gathered their dead. Ceramite coffins were prepared, purity seals affixed to the armor of the fallen, and chaplains intoned litanies of vengeance. For every skull the Predator claimed, the Astartes bound themselves tighter together. They did not see weakness in loss, but fuel for fury. Oaths were sworn over shattered armor. Bolters were raised in silent promise. They would not stop until the Xenos was purged, until its name, whatever it was, became a curse whispered only in hatred. The Predator knew this. Watching from afar, it observed their rites. It did not understand their words, but it understood the meaning. These prey did not scatter. They grew stronger. Their bond was unlike any it had faced. Where other prey broke under fear, these warriors grew only more unyielding. For the first time, the hunter wondered if the creed of the hunt, the search for ultimate prey, no matter the cost, could endure against such enemies. But doubt was fleeting. Pride flared, mandibles clicking in defiance. To abandon now would be dishonor. To falter would be worse than death. This was no longer simply a hunt, it was the defining trial of its existence. The Predator looked to its wounds not as failures, but as scars to be honored. The silence stretched, heavy and waiting, like the world itself holding its breath. Both sides bled, both sides hardened, and both knew the next clash would not be a skirmish or ambush. It would be war. The order came with the weight of a thunderclap. Initiate purge protocols. What had begun as whispers of a lone Xenos killer was now recognized as a threat worthy of the Imperium's full response. The cathedral ruins, the shattered forests, the silent villages, all became targets of a cleansing operation. The Marines no longer sought to merely defend. They would scour the land, burning it clean with holy fire until no shadow remained. Civilians were herded into convoys, escorted to subterranean shelters beneath the chanting of priests. Some wept, some prayed, others sang hymns through trembling voices. The Space Marines spared them no comfort. Theirs was not to soothe, but to safeguard. Those fit to serve were conscripted into labor details, hauling munitions and fortifying strongholds. The rest vanished into the earth, leaving the cities hollow, their streets ready to be purged of alien corruption. Above the planet, Imperial frigates aligned into scanning formation. Auspex arrays swept across the atmosphere, their sensor beams cutting like searchlights through the night. Every anomaly was flagged. Every flicker of cloaked distortion was marked for ground squads to investigate. What had once been an invisible hunter's domain was now layered with nets of surveillance, psychic and mechanical, woven tighter with each passing hour. On the surface, the Astartes advanced. Squads moved in perfect synchronicity, their formations overlapping, bolter barrels sweeping like a single organism's limbs. The chapter's captain barked orders across the box, each squad's movements mapped into a living war machine. Marines spoke litanies as they marched, prayers echoing through amplifiers, each step resounding like a hammer against the earth. Flamers roared into ruins, purging every crevice. Grenades thundered into tunnels, collapsing escape routes. Dreadnoughts, awakened from slumber, lumbered forward with booming cannons, shaking the ground with each step. The Predator watched from the shadows of a ruined spire, mandibles twitching in faint admiration. Never before had it faced prey that moved with such unbreakable order. These were not isolated warriors anymore. These were legions acting as one, their discipline as sharp as any blade. Every time it shifted to strike, Auspec's sweeps washed over the terrain, threatening to expose it. Every squad was guarded by another, overlapping arcs of bolter fire, creating killing zones that no ordinary enemy could pierce. The hunter tested them nonetheless. A plasma bolt lanced from the dark, slamming into a Marine's pauldron and hurling him to the ground. Instantly, a dozen bolters roared in unison, saturating the ruin with explosive fire. The Predator leapt aside, cloak flickering as rounds detonated stone around it. Before it could retaliate, a librarian raised his staff, psychic lightning searing across the rubble. The Predator barely evaded, the hair-thin margin between death and survival burning into its memory. These were not prey to be picked off easily anymore. These were gods hunting gods. And still, the Predator refused to flee. Its mandibles clicked softly as it observed the movements, memorizing their patterns, watching their coordination. The challenge was greater now than ever, but so too was the glory. To slay such prey, to claim a trophy from warriors who fought like a legion of iron saints, would elevate its hunt into legend. The pressure mounted, the nets of surveillance tightening, the Imperium's grip closing. Yet the fire in the predator's blood burned hotter. The purge had begun. The hunter was now the hunted, and the world itself would soon ignite beneath the clash. The forests stretched beyond the ruins like an endless labyrinth, a place where roots twisted into walls and canopies drowned the sky in shadows. To the Imperium, they were obstacles, terrain to be burned, mapped and cleared. To the predator, they were weapons waiting to be unleashed. The hunter had retreated here, bleeding but unbroken, mandibles twitching in anticipation. The Imperium had pressed forward with their purges, formations tight, Auspex scans sweeping every shadow. But here in the jungle, discipline alone was not enough. Here, the alien creed of the hunt ruled, and the predator knew every shadow could be sharpened into a blade. It began with the ravine. A Marine squad advanced in tight formation, bolters raised, scanning the tree line. Auspexes flickered, false heat signatures danced across their displays, pulled from decoys planted hours earlier. One Marine barked a warning, adjusting his scope. It was too late. The ground erupted in fire as mines detonated, hurling warriors into the air. Shrapnel tore through leaves and armor, smoke rolling thick as thunder. From the canopy, the predator struck. Plasma bolts rained down from impossible angles, ricocheting across the shattered ravine. A Marine roared defiance as his pauldron was scorched, only to vanish under the crushing weight of a falling tree, its trunk weakened earlier by the hunter's blades. The ambush was precise, each trap a note in a symphony of death, but the Astartes did not break. Even as explosions tore through their ranks, the survivors regrouped. Their captain's voice thundered over the vox, hold formation, advance. And advance they did, shields raised, bolters firing in unison. Where lesser men would scatter, these warriors turned the chaos into a march of fury. Chanting hymns, they surged through firestorms, their discipline unyielding. The predator shifted tactics. Tripwires lashed out, nets of alien alloy snapping shut, binding one Marine against a trunk. Wrist blades descended, carving deep into ceramite. Another Marine swung a chainsword, severing the net with sparks before his brother could fall. The jungle roared with bolter fire, shredding branches and tearing through undergrowth. Birds and beasts fled in screeching panic as the battle consumed the wilderness. For every trap that claimed a life, the Marines answered with relentless precision. A dreadnought lumbered into the trees, its assault cannon chewing apart trunks and tearing holes into the canopy. The predator leapt from branch to branch, cloak flickering as rounds chased it, splinters showering in its wake. It fired again, searing a Marine from behind, but even that victory cost it. A bolter shell grazed its side, Eka spraying, the cloak sputtering with instability. The jungle itself became the crucible. Smoke thickened, fires spread, and roots burned until the ground glowed red. The predator thrived in the chaos, but every strike demanded more energy. Every ambush another wound. Its breathing grew heavier, mandibles clenching as it recalibrated weapons and set fresh charges. Still, its mind burned with exhilaration. This was no ordinary battle. This was prey that endured, prey that returned every strike. The Marines pressed on, undeterred by losses. Chaplains roared sermons that drowned the predator's guttural clicks. Their voices bound their brothers together, turning fear into steel. Each time a warrior fell, the rest redoubled their pace, bolters hammering like a storm. They did not scatter. They did not falter. They endured. By nightfall, the jungle was no longer a sanctuary. It was a graveyard. Charred trunks leaned like broken spires, corpses lay half-buried in ash, and skulls gleamed where the predator had claimed its trophies. Yet even as the hunter stood among them, mandibles twitching in grim satisfaction, it felt the weight of its own exhaustion. For every Marine slain, 3 more advanced. For every trap sprung, another squad adapted. The hunter tilted its head, staring through its cracked mask at the warriors who still came forward, their armor glowing against the smoke. Its chest heaved with pain and triumph alike. This was the crucible it had sought. This was prey that fought not for survival but for faith. And in the war between faith and the hunt, there could be no stalemate forever. The jungle burned. Flames licked across the canopy, swallowing branches and choking the air with smoke. Once a sanctuary, once a weapon, the forest had become a cage. And in that cage, the predator stood. The Marines had learned. Where once they advanced in straight lines, now they moved like hunters themselves, squads converging in tightening arcs. Psychic librarians marched at the center of the formation, their eyes glowing with power. Though they could not see the alien, they felt it, not as a presence but as an absence. A hole in the warp, a blank where thought should be. They tracked the void like hounds, guiding their brothers toward the kill. Flamers roared, washing fire through ravines and clearing away cover. Heavy bolters thundered, saturating every shadow with explosive fury. The predator leapt between rocks, cloak flickering desperately, each step harder than the last. The cracks in its armor glowed with heat, its mask fractured, its chest rising and falling with strained breaths. But though it was wounded, it was not broken. It paused at the valley's heart, mandibles spreading wide in a roar that cut through the firestorm. Surrounded on every side, it did not flee. To its creed, this was not failure, this was triumph. To be encircled by prey so worthy, to stand alone against gods in flesh and steel, was the ultimate test of honor. The Marines pressed forward, chants booming from vox grills. In his name, purge the Xenos. Their voices rolled like thunder through the valley, echoing against stone walls. Their bolters rose as one, storm shields locked together, a wall of ceramite and fire closing around the hunter. The predator's blades hissed free, sharpened edges glinting in the firelight. It slammed them together in ritual defiance, a sound like steel ringing across a battlefield. Its plasma caster whined, charging, its final reserves of energy crackling with unstable power. Every weapon was primed, every muscle tensed. The hunter was cornered, and it reveled in it. Above the burning jungle, the stars seemed to watch in silence. Below, Titans prepared for the clash. The Marines sought righteous extermination. The predator sought the greatest hunt of its life. Neither would yield. The hunter had become the hunted. But in this crucible, legends would be born. The air still smelled of scorched timber and blood. Ash drifted like falling snow across the ruined forest, coating shattered branches and crumbling stone. To the predator, the scent of war was intoxicating. Its cracked mask filtered the haze, sensors flaring as a pulse of heat signatures flickered in the distance. Isolated figures moved through the devastation, a small Imperial patrol marching without support, their vox signals faint but clear. The hunter tilted its head, mandibles twitching in satisfaction. The prey had grown cautious, moving in tighter groups, but here was weakness. Here was an opportunity. Silent as shadow, the predator descended into the wreckage, cloak bending it into the smoke. Its vision swept through shifting spectrums, heat trails, energy signatures, faint motion. The patrol was real, moving through the ash like lost souls. The hunter's plasma caster whined softly, charging. It moved closer, leaping from ruined column to blackened tree, every step precise. But the prey was not what it seemed. From above, unseen to the predator, Auspex scanners tracked its movements, triangulating the ripple in its cloak. Librarians, stationed afar, whispered warnings into the vox. "The void moves," one intoned. "The shadow steps." The patrol below was bait, a handful of servitors and Marines marching deliberately exposed, their signals broadcast wide to draw the hunter in. The trap snapped shut. Bolters roared in unison, fire erupting from every angle. Hidden squads emerged from trenches and shattered walls, arcs of explosive shells tearing the ground to pieces. The predator staggered as a round glanced across its chest, cloak flickering, revealing its monstrous outline. The Marines pressed their advantage, chants echoing, for the Emperor. "Purge the Xenos." The predator responded with violence. Mines it had planted earlier detonated, hurling stone and shrapnel into Marine ranks. One Astartes fell, his armor crushed under debris. A spear, hurled with inhuman force, punched through another's pauldron, slamming him against a wall. Plasma bolts cut through the smoke, melting marble into slag, forcing the Marines to scatter behind cover. The clearing became chaos. Marines advanced in perfect rhythm, shields raised, bolters firing in devastating volleys. The predator leapt between beams of rubble, wrist blades flashing, tearing into one warrior's chest plate before being forced back by chainsword strikes. Every move was answered, every strike contested, but the trap cost the Imperium dearly. One by one, brothers fell. Their blood spattered across cracked mosaics of saints as their skulls were ripped away, claimed in the fury of battle. The predator's armor, however, grew more fractured with each clash, or spilling freely. A bolter round detonated against its leg, nearly breaking it. A psychic blast from a librarian seared across its cloak, leaving its systems sparking and unstable. Neither side relented. The predator roared in exultation, even as it bled. This was no ordinary engagement. This was not prey fleeing into panic. This was a crucible, a battlefield where gods and hunters tested one another, each strike forging legend. The Marines, though losing brothers, advanced unbroken, their chants louder, their determination absolute. By the end, both sides withdrew, smoke cloaking their wounds. The Marines had forced the predator into open battle. The predator had survived, but at a terrible cost. The trap had become a battlefield, and the hunt had entered a new scale. The great cathedral loomed against the night like the skeleton of a god. Once its spires had touched the heavens, its stained-glass windows cast rivers of golden light, and its vaults echoed with prayers to the emperor. Now shattered by war, it stood as a husk, its vast nave choked with rubble and firelight. Smoke drifted through the broken ceiling where the stars stared coldly down, as if bearing witness to the carnage that would unfold within. The Space Marines entered first, their boots striking ancient marble cracked by bombardment centuries past. Their hymns rose as one, vox grills booming through the ruin. By his will we cleanse. Bolters lifted, their barrels glowing in the half-light. Flamers hissed, igniting the shadows with rivers of fire. The ruined cathedral shook with the roar of litanies and gunfire, as if the very stones remembered what it was to be holy. From above, the predator waited. Perched upon broken rafters, its form shimmered in and out of view, cloak straining under the heat and smoke. The hunter's mask lenses swept the battlefield, picking out the radiant signatures of armored titans. Mandibles clicked in grim satisfaction. This was no skirmish in the shadows. This was war in the open, the kind of trial its kind would etch into ritual forever. The first strike was from the rafters. A spear whistled through the haze, slamming into a Marine's pauldron and hurling him backward in a burst of sparks. Bolters roared immediately, tearing apart columns where the predator had perched. Marble exploded into dust, fragments raining down like hail. The hunter leapt, claws gouging into stone, before vanishing in a shimmer of light. Flamers swept upward, fire licking across broken beams. Chainswords roared as Marines advanced, carving through rubble to flush the alien from its lair. The predator dropped low, wrist blades flashing, carving deep into one Marine's chest plate. Sparks flew, ichor and blood mingled as the warrior fell, his oath to the emperor echoing through vox even as life fled his body. But the hunter did not escape unscathed. A bolter shell detonated against its thigh, tearing armor and flesh. Another struck its shoulder, plasma caster sparking and failing. The predator roared, mandibles flaring, cloak flickering erratically as it stumbled back into the shadows. The cathedral became a storm. Bolter fire thundered through the nave, shattering statues of saints. Stained glass exploded into rivers of colored flame as flamers washed across the aisles. The predator answered with savagery, leaping from column to column, slashing down from above, dragging one Marine screaming into the darkness before his brothers tore the shadows apart with shells. The skull was claimed, polished even in the midst of battle, and hung at the hunter's side. 2 Marines had fallen, their deaths marked by the ritual clicks of the predator's tongue. But the cost was steep. Its ichor stained the cathedral floor in black rivers, its armor shattered in multiple places. Each leap left it slower, each strike more labored. And still, the Marines did not falter. Their hymns grew louder, voices merging into a single unstoppable tide of faith. Where one fell, another advanced. Where a trap sprung, another shield intercepted. They were not prey that scattered. They were prey that became the storm itself. The cathedral shook with fury. Bolters detonated, flamers spread infernos, and the predator's roars mingled with hymns into a sound that seemed to tear the heavens open. Every strike was answered with steel. Every wound deepened the legend of the hunt. At last, the structure itself could take no more. Columns cracked under detonations. The ceiling groaned as supports collapsed. With a sound like thunder, the roof gave way, stone and fire raining down upon hunters and prey alike. The cathedral fell inward, entombing the battle in dust and flame. And in that storm of ruin, neither side yielded. The cathedral was collapsing around them. Fire roared through shattered stained glass, molten colors dripping from iron frames, while the thunder of falling stone shook the ground. Amidst the ruin, two figures stepped forward, as if drawn by fate itself. From the flames emerged a marine champion. His relic armor gleamed beneath soot and ash, every plate etched with prayers, every seal a mark of victories long past. In one hand, a chainsword buzzed hungrily in the other. A storm shield glowed with the radiance of sanctified energy. He was no longer just a warrior, he was the Emperor's judgment given form. Opposite him stood the Predator. Blood streaked its mandibles, armor fractured and sparking, trophies swaying from its belt. Yet it stood tall, unbowed, eyes locked upon this towering foe. Slowly, deliberately, it detached its cracked mask and let it fall to the ground. To face such a rival cloaked, hidden, or veiled would be dishonor. This was to be a duel worthy of legend. The champion raised his shield in silent salute. The Predator clicked its mandibles in return. Then, without words, they charged. The first clash shook the cathedral. Chainsword teeth screeched against wrist blades, sparks bursting into the filet air. The Predator drove forward with feral speed, slashing in a whirlwind of steel, only to be forced back by the champion's shield. A plasma bolt erupted from the hunter's shoulder cannon, striking the shield in a burst of white fire. The champion staggered but held firm, raising his blade in riposte. "By the Emperor's will!" his voice thundered, cutting through the roar of collapsing stone. The Predator answered with a guttural roar that shook dust from the rafters. It lunged, blades tearing through marble as the champion sidestepped, shield bashing forward to crack against the alien's chest. The impact sent the Predator skidding back, claws digging into stone, ichor dripping from its chest wound. The duel spiraled into chaos. The Predator leapt to higher ground, striking from above, blades flashing in arcs too fast for mortal eyes. The champion's shield intercepted each blow, his chainsword countering with brutal sweeps. Sparks rained from every strike, mingling with embers that swirled like fireflies in the burning cathedral. Both landed decisive hits. The champion's blade bit deep into the Predator's thigh, ichor spraying across cracked marble. The Predator's wrist blade carved a gouge across the champion's pauldron, splintering relic armor that had endured centuries of war. Each wound only fueled their resolve. Neither faltered, neither relented. At last, they broke apart, both heaving, both bloodied, weapons raised in mirrored defiance. The champion's armor smoked, purity seals torn and burned, but his shield still rose unbroken. The Predator's chest heaved, mandibles dripping with blood, but its roar shook the ruins like thunder. Neither had won, neither had lost, but both understood. This duel was not over. With a final clash of blades sparking in the firelight, the Predator disengaged, cloak flickering weakly as it retreated into shadow. The champion stood alone amidst the flames, shield lifted high, his voice echoing through the ruin. "It will face me again." And in the darkness, the Predator's roar answered, not of rage, but of promise. The hunt was unfinished. The final confrontation had been sealed. The battlefield lay in eerie silence, broken only by the distant groan of collapsing ruins and the crackle of lingering flames. Smoke clung to the air like a shroud, twisting in unnatural patterns as the librarians of the Adeptus Astartes advanced. Robed and armored, their psychic hoods glowed faintly, and the air around them crackled with unseen energy. Their presence bent reality itself. Mortal soldiers could not look upon them without unease, for to walk beside a psyker was to brush against the warp, to hear whispers from places where no sane mind should wander. Now those whispers were being shaped into weapons. The librarians closed their eyes, reaching out across the ashen plain. Their minds stretched into shadows, brushing against the echoes of life and death, the heat of anger, the chill of fear. And there it was, not a presence, but its absence. A hole in the weave of thought, a hollow silence amidst the storm, where every stone, every creature, every soldier left ripples in the psychic sea. The Predator was a void. A darkness that consumed resonance rather than emitted it. "Do you feel it?" one librarian whispered, his voice echoing within the minds of his brothers. "It moves where nothing should move." The Marines listened with grim determination. They could not see the creature with their eyes, nor track it with their auspex scanners, but the psyker's warnings were enough. They adjusted formations, squads converging upon each flicker of absence. The jungle trembled under their march, bolters raised, hymnals vibrating through vox speakers. No shadow escapes his light. The predator, concealed in the canopy, froze. Its mask lenses flared as psychic static clawed against its senses. The cloak shimmered, destabilized by waves it could not comprehend. It felt, for the first time, truly hunted. The shadows that had always been its sanctuary now betrayed it. The silence it had trusted to mask its movements had become the very beacon that gave it away. Mandibles flared in frustration. The hunter leapt from branch to branch, each movement faster, more erratic, trying to confuse its pursuers. But the librarians followed, their psychic voices murmuring, guiding bolts and flamers closer with each heartbeat. There, it falters. Strike. Bolters roared, shattering bark and splintering trees. A plasma burst from the predator's shoulder cannon answered, but its shot went wide, detonating against rubble. Already, it was adapting. The hunter deployed decoys. Heat emitters dropped from its belt, scattering false signatures across the field. Scouts fired into the diversions, briefly confused, but the librarians corrected them, sweeping aside illusions with psychic clarity. The predator roared in guttural defiance, its cry shaking leaves from the canopy. But even as the Marines closed in, it crafted misdirection with ruthless precision. Nets dropped from branches, tangling one warrior before his chainsword carved him free. A spectral lure, a projection shimmering from its broken mask, darted through the trees, drawing bolter fire away. In its creed, deception was not dishonor, it was survival. Still, the pressure mounted. The predator had never faced prey that hunted in such ways. To it, hunting was a dance of silence and speed. But now, silence was its enemy, and speed only marked it more clearly in the psychic web. It had always stalked shadows, but now even shadows burned beneath the Emperor's gaze. It crouched upon a ruined spire, chest heaving, ichor dripping into the ash. For a moment it was still, listening. In the distance, the librarians' chants echoed, their voices like knives carving into its sanctuary. The Marines advanced step by step, relentless, their bolters poised, their faith unshakable. The hunter knew then, this was no longer merely its hunt. This was survival. And in that realization, its mandibles clicked with grim determination. The greater the trial, the greater the honor. The void was closing in, and the predator would answer with blood. The predator had learned one truth from its long war across the stars. To break warriors, one must break the world that sustains them. And though the Space Marines themselves were gods of war, their machine of war still needed fuel, communication, and order. It was there, in the arteries of the Imperium's might, that the hunter struck next. The first attack came at midnight. A Vox tower loomed above the ruins, its transmission arrays sweeping signals across the valley. Mortal soldiers guarded its base, chanting litanies of vigilance, bolters trembling in human hands. None saw the shadow until it was too late. The predator's cloak shimmered, its blades flashing in silence. Guards fell with throats split before alarms could sound. A plasma charge detonated at the tower's base, engulfing the structure in flame. Sparks cascaded through the night sky, communications fracturing into static. The Imperium's net of vigilance had been torn. Before the ashes settled, the predator moved again. Ammunition caches hidden beneath makeshift bunkers erupted into fireballs as mines planted with surgical precision detonated in sequence. Servitors screamed in mechanical distortion as their bodies were ripped apart. Tanks of promethium ignited, turning trenches into infernos. Human auxiliaries panicked, some fleeing, others frozen in terror as trophies were mounted where the predator passed. Skulls, cleaned, stripped, displayed with ritual precision. Each cache, each ruined outpost bore one, nailed to a wall hung from a shattered antenna, or spiked upon the remains of a shattered statue. To mortals it was terror made flesh. To the predator, it was honor, the proof of a hunt fulfilled. For the Marines, these trophies were not fear, but insult. When they discovered the desecrated sites, their responses were immediate and furious. Chaplains thundered litanies of vengeance, their croziers blazing in the night. "This beast mocks us," they roared. "It parades false triumphs before the faithful. In his name, we will strike it down." To the predator, each skull was a sacred testament. To the Imperium, they were heresy made manifest. The sabotage escalated. Vox chatter filled with reports of sudden explosions, of convoys vanishing into ambush, of servitors found gutted, their mechanical skulls mounted alongside human ones. The predator had shifted the battlefield into chaos. While the Marines' discipline held, their mortal allies wavered. Guardsmen whispered of a demon that struck where no army could defend. Some refused to march into the jungles again. Others clutched prayer beads until their fingers bled, begging the emperor for deliverance. But victory came at a cost for the hunter. Each strike demanded energy. Each escape drained its failing cloak and battered body. Its armor was cracked from bolter fire, its chest seared by psychic backlash, its movements slowed by wounds poorly healed. Still it pressed on, mandibles flaring in triumph after each kill, each explosion, each trophy claimed. The weight of skulls upon its belt grew heavier, clattering as it moved, their hollow eyes staring like a council of silent witnesses. In its mind, the hunt was ascending toward perfection. The Marines had proven themselves worthy, not only as warriors but as an empire whose strength demanded dismantling piece by piece. To strike at their warriors was glory. To strike at their empire was transcendence. Yet the Marines were not blind. The captain studied the sabotage with cold calculation, mapping the pattern of attacks, noting the precision, the ritual, the deliberate desecration. "It seeks to bleed us before the kill," he told his brothers. "But every strike reveals more. Every skull it mounts brings it closer to our blades." The librarians agreed, their voices resonating with grim prophecy. Its trophies are not trophies alone. They are coordinates. Each one marks the path of its downfall. The predator did not hear these words. It only felt the rising tension, the Marines' fury sharpening, their pursuit tightening. For every skull it hung, for every explosion it lit across the ruins, the net closed further. The spiral of escalation could not hold forever. Hunter and prey were circling toward their breaking point. The ruined chapel stood as a fractured monument, its spire broken, its altar scorched, yet still it drew the Space Marines to gather within its walls. The echoes of sabotage still lingered outside, fires smoldered, rubble smoked, and the smell of blood drifted on the wind. Yet here, amidst shattered icons, faith endured. The chaplains stood at the forefront, black-armored giants crowned with iron halos. Their Crozius Arcanum pulsed with sanctified power as they raised their voices above the ruin. "Brothers, the foe thinks we are weakened. It believes its mockeries wound us. But we are the Emperor's wrath, and his wrath does not break, it sharpens." The words reverberated like thunder, each syllable a hammer blow to the hearts of their kin. Marines struck fists against armor in unison, chanting vows of vengeance. For every brother lost, they would claim 10 victories. For every skull desecrated, they would answer with holy fire. Their discipline was not shaken, it was reforged. The librarians stepped forward, staffs crackling as they purged the lingering warp stench from the ruins. Psychic light bathed the cracked walls, burning away the void's residue that the predator's presence had left behind. To mortal eyes, it was a cleansing flame. To the Marines, it was proof. Their enemy was formidable, yes, but the Emperor's light was greater. Where silence and void prowled, faith and flame would burn brighter still. Above, unseen, the predator watched. Cloaked, bleeding still from its raids, it crouched upon the shattered rafters of the chapel. Its mask lenses glowed faintly as it observed the ritual unfolding. The warriors below did not scatter, nor did they cower. They gathered, they prayed, they pledged themselves anew to their God Emperor. Their unity was unbreakable. Their resilience shone even brighter than their weapons. For the first time, the predator hesitated. Were these prey? Or were they hunters, bound by a creed as unyielding as its own? Their faith mirrored its honor, their chants resonated like its rituals, their oaths rang like its trophies. For a heartbeat, it saw kinship instead of quarry. But then its mandibles clicked shut in grim certainty. The hunt was sacred. Creed demanded trial. And there was no greater trial than this. Below, the Marines raised their voices as one, hymns shaking the cracked stone. The ruined chapel became alive with faith, a bastion of iron wills and burning devotion. Their voices carried into the night, carried across the battlefield, defying shadows and silence. They would not break, they would not bend. The predator slipped back into the smoke, trophies clattering softly at its side. It too would not break. The stage was set. The next clash would not be ambush or skirmish, it would be destiny. Dawn broke not with sunlight but with steel. The ground shook as armored columns rolled across the battlefield. Rhinos thundered forward in formation, their treads crushing rubble into dust. Predator tanks followed, their turrets swiveling, heavy bolters glowing as they prepared to unleash storms of fire. Above them strode the awakened giant, a dreadnought, its sarcophagus sealed with the remains of a hero long dead, now reborn in adamantine wrath. Every step it took cracked stone, every whir of its servos sang with vengeance. The Imperium had shed all restraint. The hunt was no longer an operation, it was a war. Auspex arrays swept ahead, guided by orbital uplinks. Every tremor of movement, every fluctuation in heat, every flicker of cloak distortion was logged and marked. Vox channels filled with curt commands as squads coordinated fire arcs, forming a moving wall of death. The Marines' chants boomed through amplifiers, each word a hammer upon the Predator's silence. Steel is our shield. Faith is our fire. The Emperor is our strength. From the ruins, the Predator watched. Mandibles twitched, breath came ragged through cracked armor. Its cloak flickered faintly, a pale echo of perfection. But its eyes glowed with anticipation. The prey had escalated to its greatest form. Gods clad in steel, machines of war that shook the heavens. To the hunter, this was not fear, this was the pinnacle of honor. The greater the foe, the greater the glory. The first strike was thunder. A Predator tank's cannon barked, detonating a ruin into dust. The hunter leapt aside, cloak blurring its outline as rubble showered down. Plasma fire erupted in return, a bolt searing into a rhino's tread, the transport grinding to a halt in fire and sparks. Marines poured from its hatches, bolters raised, chanting even as smoke engulfed them. The dreadnought advanced, its assault cannon spitting streams of explosive shells. Trees shattered, walls collapsed, and the Predator danced between cover, cloak flickering under the storm. Mines it had planted earlier ignited in sequence, tearing a rhino apart in a plume of fire. Marines staggered, but the formation held, discipline unbroken. The battlefield became chaotic. Flamers roared from rhino hatches, bathing ruins in fire. The Predator countered with razor-edged traps, wires slicing into armor joints, spears hurled with inhuman force. A Marine fell, pinned against the smoking hull of his own transport, skulls swiftly claimed and mounted in the storm. Heavy bolters swept the ruins, detonations chasing the hunter as it vanished into smoke, only to reappear in another blaze of plasma fire. But the Imperium's fury was relentless. For every tank destroyed, another advanced. For every trap sprung, another formation adjusted. The Predator's cloak sputtered as Auspex beams tracked it, librarians directing fire with psychic foresight. The dreadnought's iron fist tore through a ruin where it had stood moments earlier, the impact shaking the ground like a quake. The hunter roared, a guttural cry of both triumph and defiance, as it drove a plasma bolt directly into a Predator tank's turret. The explosion shook the field, flames consuming the vehicle. Marines cheered, not in fear of loss, but in praise of the foe that demanded their full devotion. To fight such a beast was itself a glory, even in sacrifice. The field became a furnace, steel grinding, fire roaring, faith clashing with primal fury. The Predator bled from a dozen wounds, its body trembling under the storm. Yet still it struck, refusing to yield, each attack a statement of creed. The Imperium's armor burned, the Predator's strength waned, and together they carved the land into ruin. The hunt had become war, and neither hunter nor empire would leave unchanged. The jungle was no longer a sanctuary, it was a weapon. The Predator had seen the steel tide of the Imperium grind forward, machines and titans sweeping aside ambushes with sheer force. To face them in open battle was suicide, but to make the world itself his blade, that was honor. That was cunning. The hunter moved with desperate precision, planting canisters of stolen promethium along riverbanks, lining ravines with mines, rigging cliff edges with deadfall traps. Each step, each act, was accompanied by a low growl of determination. Blood seeped through its armor, each wound a reminder that the hunt was reaching its zenith. Its mandibles twitched, not in fear, but in exhilaration. The environment would burn, and in that fire, legends would be forged. The Marines advanced. Rhinos crushed roots beneath treads, bolters swept the undergrowth, and chaplains roared hymns that shook the canopy. They came as a tide of faith and iron, relentless even in the face of unseen traps. And the Predator answered. With a single shot, it ignited a river. Promethium surged into flame, fire leaping skyward in roaring waves. Marines marched through it without hesitation, armor glowing red, lenses blazing through the inferno. Their chants only grew louder. Through flame and shadow, the Emperor guides. Yet even they could not emerge unscathed. One Marine collapsed, joint seared, and in that moment the predator struck, blades flashing, tearing his skull free before vanishing back into the smoke. The trap escalated. Mines detonated beneath advancing squads, hurling armored bodies into the trees. From the cliffs above, weakened stone and sharpened logs cascaded down, crushing a rhino beneath tons of falling debris. The predator moved like the storm itself, striking from the flames, vanishing into choking smoke, its growls merging with the roar of the burning world. But the Astartes did not break. They advanced through walls of fire, storm shields raised, bolters hammering blind into the smoke. Their flamers added to the blaze, purging every shadow the predator could hide in. The jungle screamed as it collapsed, trees falling, animals fleeing, the ground itself scorched black. Marines fought amidst it all, blades and chainswords cutting through firelit haze. Every step was war. Every breath was defiant. The predator thrived in the chaos, but it faltered too. Its cloak sputtered, struggling to mask its form through heat waves. Its wounds burned with every movement, ichor hissing against fire. Each strike claimed trophies, skulls ripped from armored giants, their hollows gleaming red in the inferno, but each cost the hunter dearly. Bolter shells glanced across its chest, a chainsword tore shallow across its back, and psychic echoes scraped at its mind like claws. Still it roared. The predator dragged a Marine from the flames, skull claimed in ritual exultation even as another squad unleashed suppressive fire. Plasma bolts cut through the smoke, shattering trees into splinters. The hunter danced between them, striking, retreating, striking again, its mandibles wide in savage triumph. Yet beneath that triumph, exhaustion gnawed. Its breath came ragged. Its blood fell in rivers. Its trophies weighed heavily at its side. The battlefield had become a furnace, a crucible of faith and fury. Marines pushed forward, undaunted by fire or death, their unity making them unstoppable. The predator pushed back, one hunter against an empire, its cunning turning terrain into an arsenal of traps. Neither yielded. Both bled. By the end, the jungle was gone. Nothing remained but ash, flame, and the bodies of the fallen. The predator stood amidst it, shoulders heaving, mandibles dripping with blood, its body trembling with both triumph and strain. Across the inferno, the Marines stood too, armor scorched, banners blackened, but their formation unbroken. The world itself had been consumed, and yet the war endured. The battlefield was no longer jungle, no longer ruin, it was a graveyard. Smoke clung to the land like a veil, broken only by the shapes of shattered tanks and scorched ceramite. The ground was littered with the husks of fallen warriors, their armor still steaming from flame and plasma. Marines trudged through ash, their banners tattered but still raised. The predator stood among ruins of its own making, blood dripping from its mandibles, trophies jangling heavily at its side. Neither side had won. Neither side had yielded. Both had been consumed. The predator's technology cut through squads with merciless efficiency. Mines detonated in perfect sequence, tearing armored giants into fire and bone. Plasma bolts melted stone and ceramite alike. Even the hunter's blades, dulled and cracked, still found flesh beneath armor. Yet every strike drew an answer. Bolters hammered its frame, chainswords ripped into its skin, and psychic fire burned into its mind. The jungle itself bore witness to the exchange. Trees reduced to cinders, rivers clogged with corpses, the very earth split open by fury. Marines carried their fallen with reverence. Coffins of iron were prepared even as the war raged, purity seals affixed to armor still smoking from battle. Chaplains intoned litanies of vengeance, their voices breaking but unbowed. For every brother lost, the Emperor demands retribution, they thundered. Their resolve did not fracture, it crystallized into steel. Each loss was another oath, another blade sharpened for the inevitable end. The predator honored its dead in its own way. Skulls were mounted in towers of bone and ash, arranged in careful ritual. Each one polished, each one placed to face the battlefield. To human eyes, it was a mockery, a barbaric desecration of the emperor's choice. But to the hunter, it was true. Each skull was a testament to worthy prey, each monument a declaration. This was not slaughter. This was a legend. And so the war spiraled on. Strike answered strike, trap answered charge, blood answered blood. It was no longer a hunt, nor a crusade. It was a war of attrition, grinding flesh, faith and honor into dust. Time itself became the enemy. The Marines could not allow this war to stretch endlessly. The Imperium demanded closure, demanded the Xenos purged. The Predator, too, felt the weight of exhaustion pressing upon it, each wound deepening, each breath harsher than the last. Both sides understood what the end must be. There would be no survival through attrition. There would be no victory in silence. Only a final duel could end this. One champion must fall, and in that fall, legend would be carved into eternity. The ruined city square glowed with firelight. Statues of saints lay shattered, their stone faces broken but still gazing upward, as if imploring the heavens for judgment. Amidst the rubble, the Astartes assembled, their massive forms kneeling upon the cracked marble, their armor scorched and bloodied from the endless attrition. Above them, the chaplains stood, black-armored giants crowned with halos of iron and flame. Their Crozius Arcanum gleamed with power as they raised their voices over the ruin. "Brothers," thundered one, his vox-grill turning his words into iron, "this Xenos thinks itself the hunter. It mounts trophies of our fallen, believing it can mock the sons of the Emperor. But we are not prey. We are his wrath, his fire, his judgment. And judgment comes for the beast." The words reverberated across the square, a storm of faith crashing against the hearts of the assembled Astartes. Another chaplain stepped forward, striking his Crozius against the stone until sparks flew. "For every skull it has stolen, we will forge a mountain of vengeance. For every brother taken, we will carve the truth into its hide. There is no prey, no predator, there is only the Emperor's will." The Marines slammed fists against armor in unison, the sound echoing like thunderclaps. Their chants rose, hymns older than the Imperium itself, carried by amplified voices that shook the ruins. "Ave Imperator! Ave Imperator!" Their bolters were raised in salute, then lowered to be blessed. Chaplains anointed weapons with oils, inscribed armor with litanies of hatred, affixed fresh purity seals to scorched plates. What had begun as war now became a crusade, not a battle for survival, but a holy trial. The Predator watched from the shadows of a collapsed tower, its lenses narrowing as it observed the transformation. It had seen many warriors, many armies across the stars. But these were no mere soldiers. These were zealots clad in steel, warriors whose faith itself became their shield. Their chants did not tremble with fear. They rang with absolute conviction, voices defying the void itself. For a fleeting moment, the Predator felt a strange kinship. Here was another creed, another code, not of the hunt, but of faith, yet no less unbreakable. Mandibles clicked softly in contemplation. Were these enemies prey, or rival hunters bound to a god it could not comprehend? The answer mattered little. Its own creed demanded the trial continue. Honor demanded that such prey be tested, that such faith be measured in blood. The hunter primed its plasma caster, claws flexing, trophies rattling against its battered armor. The crusade began. Marines rose from their kneeling ranks and surged forward as one. Their chants shook the ruins, their bolters roared in unison, their storm shields shone with holy light. Every street, every alley, every corner of the broken city was purged in flame and fury. The Predator struck with precision, leaping from shadows to claim one, dragging another into the dark, skulls claimed in ritual. But for every kill, the Astartes pressed harder, their zeal unbroken. The square became an altar of fire. Faith against cunning, prayer against plasma, hymn against roar. Neither side bent. Both knew the end drew near. The heavens ignited. From orbit, Imperial warships realigned, their massive cannons rumbling with apocalyptic power. Fox channels thundered with a single command: bring fire, burn the shadow. A moment later, the sky tore open. Bolts of light fell from the void, streaking across the clouds like burning lances from the Emperor himself. They struck the battlefield with the fury of gods, white-hot detonations vaporizing entire sectors in blossoms of fire and ash. Towers crumbled into dust, trenches vanished beneath molten earth, and shockwaves rippled through the city, tearing apart what little remained of its sanctuaries. The Predator ran through the storm. Its cloak flickered as orbital beams tore the ground apart around it, craters opening like wombs in the earth. Rubble collapsed in sheets, flames engulfed the streets. And still the hunter moved, darting from ruin to ruin, leaping across crumbling ledges with superhuman speed. Every strike from above sought to bury it, to erase it from existence, yet each time it emerged from the smoke, mandibles wide in defiant roars. The Marines pressed the attack. Squads advanced through the inferno, armor scorched, purity seals incinerated, their chants rising above the cataclysm. Ave Imperator! Ave Imperator! Bolters roared in cadence with falling fire. Chainswords revved as they cut through collapsing walls. They were not merely advancing, they were embodying the Emperor's judgment, turning the apocalypse itself into a crusade. The Predator struck amidst the chaos. From smoke-choked alleys it lunged, blades flashing to sever a Marine's helm before vanishing again. Plasma bolts seared across the flames, melting armor and stone in blinding bursts. Traps planted long before were detonated mid-bombardment, scattering entire squads in explosions that blended seamlessly into the orbital barrage. For the Marines, it became impossible to tell whether the death that struck them came from the heavens or from the shadow that moved among them. Yet the price mounted for the hunter. A bolter shell glanced across its ribs, tearing through flesh already battered. A psychic blast from a librarian scorched its mask, burning circuits until one lens went dark. The cloak sputtered, unable to shield it fully against the brightness of raining fire. The Predator bled freely now, ichor dripping in heavy streams across the stone, sizzling where it touched molten earth. And still, it roared. Still, it struck. One squad was torn apart in the middle of their hymn. The Predator dragged bodies into the fire, skulls claimed even as flames licked its armor. Another tank was crippled by a plasma spear hurled through its engine, the explosion scattering burning wreckage across the square. For every strike from orbit, the hunter answered with a kill, refusing to bend beneath the heavens' wrath. The battlefield became a vision of the apocalypse. Buildings collapsed in cascades of fire, statues melted into slag, rivers boiled into clouds of steam. Marines marched through the cataclysm, their voices defiant, their shields raised against the storm. The Predator moved between them like a phantom of flame and steel, cutting, leaping, retreating, returning. Both sides bled, both sides burned, neither yielding. To the mortals who cowered in shelters below, it seemed as though the world itself was ending. To the Marines, it was a holy trial, the Emperor's fire cleansing the impure. To the Predator, it was perfection. Prey that endured apocalypse, prey that refused to fall. This was no longer simply the greatest hunt. It was the only hunt worthy of its creed. By the time the cannons fell silent, nothing remained of the city square but a cratered wasteland. The Marines stood amid ash, their banners tattered but still raised, their chants echoing across the ruin. The Predator stood, too, half-shattered, cloak in tatters, mask blackened, body carved with wounds. Both breathed the fire, both trembled with exhaustion, but neither relented. The heavens themselves had burned, but the war endured. The battlefield was ash and flame, a graveyard of titans. Smoke curled upward into the blackened sky, carrying with it the stench of war, of blood, of scorched steel. The Predator stood amidst the ruin, chest heaving, its body broken but not bowed. Its mask was ruined, one lens shattered, circuitry sparking with dying light. With slow, deliberate movements, the hunter reached up, unclasped the battered helm, and cast it aside. For this final trial there would be no cloak, no veil, no concealment. Its face, scarred and bloodied, turned to the fire. Mandibles spread in a guttural roar that echoed through the craters, a declaration for all to hear. Then, with its wrist blades, it carved into its own flesh. Ritual runes scored into skin and muscle, each cut weeping black ichor that steamed in the heat. The symbols burned with meaning, not survival, not escape, but glory. Glory or death. It traced sigils of the hunt across its chest, its arms, its brow, marking itself as a warrior consecrated for the final trial. The Predator no longer sought to endure. It sought only to end the hunt in legend. Across the ruin, the Space Marines gathered, battered yet unbroken. Their armor was cracked, their banners shredded, their numbers thinned, but their faith blazed brighter than the fires around them. Chaplains raised their voices, Crozius Arcanum lifted high. Brothers! The Xenos calls for judgment, and judgment we shall give. In his name, we answer. Their words carried like thunder through the ash. The Marines struck their fists against their chests, chanting as one, voices merging with the roar of fire. Ave Imperator! Ave Imperator! They were not merely soldiers preparing for another battle. They were priests of war, crusaders consecrated for the kill. And then the champion stepped forth. Clad in relic armor, purity seals torn and blackened, he stood as a living symbol of the Emperor's wrath. His storm shield bore the marks of countless blows, its surface scorched by plasma and fire, yet it remained unbroken. In his other hand, the chainsword hummed with deadly hunger, its teeth gleaming red in the light of flame. He raised the blade high, his voice booming over the ruin. "In the Emperor's name, your blasphemy ends." The predator roared in reply, mandibles wide, blades flashing as it slammed them together in ritual defiance. The sound was like steel shrieking against steel, reverberating across the battlefield. It took a step forward, trophies clattering at its side, its body carved in blood runes, its eyes locked upon its rival. No longer would there be sabotage, no longer traps, no longer shadows, no machines, no squads, no walls of steel. Only two remained, the alien hunter, bound by the creed of glory, and the Emperor's champion, bound by faith, unshakable. The Marines drew back, giving their champion space. The predator stepped forward through the fire, claws digging into scorched earth. Two codes, two creeds, two legends collided in silence before the storm. Then the predator roared into the flames, and the champion lifted his shield high. The final duel had begun. The guns fell quiet as if the planet itself had been commanded to hold its breath. What remained of the city glowed like a forge. Streets turned to rivers of embered glass. Marines withdrew in measured steps until their lines formed a perfect ring, helms tilted toward the center. Chaplains' voices ebbed to a solemn murmur. Between the ranks burned a circle of debris, a boundary drawn by ruin and will alike, an arena where only creed and courage mattered. Into that circle stepped the predator. Unmasked, scar-slashed, and carved with fresh blood runes, the hunter walked with the terrible poise of a creature that had chosen its death and found it worthy. Trophies clinked against battered plates. Its cloak hung in tatters, yet every motion was precise, predatory, sure. The shoulder cannon cycled with a low electric purr. Wrist blades opened like moonlit fangs. It clicked a challenge that was part raw, part ritual, a sound that rolled across the ring and set ash drifting. Opposite, the champion advanced. Relic armor wore the kisses of plasma, and flame purity seals fluttered like torn prayers. In his right hand, the chainsword growled, each adamant tooth eager. His left arm lifted the storm shield, its surface shimmering with warded light, inscriptions glowing as though lit from within by the Emperor's gaze. He did not hurry. He did not waver. By his will, he intoned, and the words moved through the ranks like a tide. Helmets dipped, bolters lowered. Faith pressed in like gravity. Flames leaned inward. Heat shimmered in sheets, painting both warriors in mirage. The librarians withdrew their sight from the void, refusing to tilt fate. This would be trial, not sorcery. No artillery sang. No engine intruded. Even the wounded quieted, listening to the hiss of settling rubble and the click of tightening talons. They began to circle. Each breath smoked the air, each heartbeat sounded like drums beneath armor. Heat shimmered, turning edges into ghosts and distances into lies. Time narrowed to purpose. Footfalls crushed char into stars. The predator mapped shield angles, hip stance, the infinitesimal tremor before a lunge. The champion read breath and rhythm, the cadence of alien musculature, the telltale twitch when a hunter decides to kill. Not war now, ritual. Not numbers, names. Everything beyond the ring blurred to insignificance. The galaxy shrank until only code confronted creed across a boundary of fire. The hunter tested distance with a faint shoulder cannon humming to a higher note. The champion answered by tilting the shield, catching heat along its rim to judge the arc. Both paused, as if the world itself had signaled readiness. "Now," whispered someone. The predator struck first, not to kill, but to declare. Plasma spat a white line, the shield flared and held. In the same breath, chainsword teeth erupted, the growl devouring the space between them. Wrist blades crossed the edge in a fountain of sparks. The impact shoved ash outward in a ring, dust billowing like incense. They separated a pace, measured, reverent, then resumed the slow orbit, weapons angled, hearts thunderous. Around them the circle burned higher, marine statuesque, their breath syncing with the duelist's cadence. The predator's mandibles spread in feral salute. The champion bowed his helm a fraction. The last illusions fell away. Strength, faith, craft, hunger. Nothing else remained. A second exchange, closer, hungrier. Steel sang. Ceramite cracked. The storm shield rang like a struck altar. The shoulder cannon whined again, eager, restrained. Every sound carried the weight of decision. At the perimeter, banners lifted on a hot gust and stilled. In the heart, two figures drew the line that would decide a legend and stepped across it. The silence shattered. The Predator struck with fire. Its shoulder cannon flared, plasma screaming across the ring like a comet. The Marine champion's storm shield snapped into position, intercepting the bolt in a blinding flare. Heat bled into the air, glassing the stone beneath their feet, but the shield held. From behind it, the champion advanced, each step like the toll of a cathedral bell. The Predator roared and leapt, wrist blades extended, striking downward in a flurry of lightning-fast arcs. The chainsword met them with a growl, its teeth screeching as they chewed against alien alloy. Sparks showered around them, flames reflecting in every shard. The Predator pressed, speed and ferocity turning the air into a storm of blows. The champion countered with perfect rhythm, shield bashing forward, blades sweeping in disciplined arcs. Each impact was like hammer against anvil, faith clashing with hunger. A strike slipped through. The chainsword roared and bit into the Predator's shoulder, carving deep through flesh and armor. Black ichor sprayed, hissing as it met molten ground. The hunter staggered, mandibles flaring in pain, and answered with a backhanded strike, wrist blade carving a jagged line across the champion's pauldron. Ceramite cracked, purity seals burned away. Both reeled, neither retreating. They circled again, each gasping in their own way. The Marine threw gritted prayers, the Predator threw guttural growls. Then they clashed once more, this time with no hesitation. The Predator feinted low, blades aimed for the champion's legs. The storm shield slammed down, blocking the strike, but it opened the champion's flank. Plasma fire erupted at point-blank range, scorching across relic armor, melting sigils into slag. The champion roared, not in pain, but in fury, driving his shield forward like a wall. The Predator was hurled backward, skidding across blackened stone. Before it could rise, the chain sword descended. Teeth screeched against its wrist blades, shattering one, sparks flying. The Predator caught the strike with its remaining weapon, muscles trembling under the force. The champion leaned in, voice booming. "In the Emperor's name, you fall." The Predator answered not with words, but with primal rage. It lunged into the blade, letting it gouge across its chest even as it drove a hidden blade from its gauntlet into the champion's thigh. Both cried out, one in fury, the other in guttural triumph. Both pulled free, stumbling back, blood and IQR mingling on the ash. The crowd of Marines held their silence, watching gods collide. Blow after blow followed, each more desperate, each more savage. The chainsword carved a gouge across the Predator's mandibles, splitting one apart. The hunter retaliated with a roar, slamming its claws into the champion's shield and sending a shockwave through the ground. Plasma bolts seared around them, reflecting off marble shards as fire licked higher. The duel was no longer clean strikes and measured counters. It was survival, it was creed, it was the will to stand when standing seemed impossible. The champion's blade tore into the Predator's ribs, cracking bone, splitting flesh. The Predator howled, mandibles snapping wildly, and countered with a headbutt that rang against the champion's helm, denting steel. Blood streaked the champion's faceplate and drenched the Predator's chest. The circle of fire grew higher, as though the world itself demanded sacrifice. Neither yielded. The Predator's plasma cannon failed with a sputter of sparks burned out by overuse. Its cloak lay in tatters, its armor fractured beyond repair. And still it struck, blades flashing, body trembling with rage and determination. The champion's armor was split and smoking, his shield gouged and scarred, his chainsword chewing through its last reserves of power, but he stood, unbroken, faith burning brighter than the flames. At last, both combatants staggered. The champion's chainsword dripped with IQR, his shield arm hanging heavy. The Predator's chest heaved, mandibles dripping blood, its blades bent and broken. They locked eyes across the ruined circle, fire casting them in silhouette. Two warriors, two creeds, two legends. And still they stood. The duel had bled into eternity. Each strike slowed, each breath labored, each movement carved from will alone. Fire curled around them, ash falling like snow, as if the galaxy itself leaned closer to witness. Predator and champion faced one another across scorched stone, weapons trembling but still raised. The Predator's mandibles flared, ichor dripping from torn flesh. Its broken blades gleamed faintly in the firelight. Across from it, the champion's armor smoked, pauldrons split, purity seals consumed in flame. His chainsword hummed weakly, teeth sparking with every rotation. Both warriors were little more than ruins, but neither bowed. With a guttural roar, the predator lunged. With a cry of faith, the champions surged forward. Their movements converged in a single instant, destiny tightening into a blade's edge. The predator's wrist blade plunged deep, tearing through ceramite, driving into the champion's chest. Sparks erupted as armor failed, blood blooming across his breastplate. The champion's body shuddered with the impact, but his arm did not falter. His relic blade sang in one last, thunderous arc, cleaving through the predator's torso, splitting hide and bone, tearing deep until the weapon lodged against its spine. Both froze, locked together. Their eyes met in the fire's glow, alien orbs reflecting the Emperor's light, human lenses reflecting primal hunger. The world was silent. Marines looked on, motionless. The flames themselves seemed to pause. The predator's mandibles clicked, not in rage but in declaration. The cry of a hunter fulfilled, the sound of triumph, of legend claimed. The champion whispered through blood, "Emperor, receive me." His voice was faint but steady, carried on the certainty of eternal duty. For a moment, both stood upright, weapons buried in one another, blood and ichor mingling on the ground between them. Neither yielded, neither surrendered. They remained statues of defiance, twin icons carved into the crucible of war. Then, as if obeying a shared signal, both fell. The predator slumped first, claws scraping sparks against stone as it collapsed into fire. Its runes burned bright with blood before fading into ash. The champion staggered, sword still lodged in alien flesh, shield arm falling limp. He fell to his knees, then to his side, helm tilting toward the heavens. His last breath rattled through the vox grill before silence claimed him. The ring of fire closed around their bodies. Flames consumed stone, banners, and bones alike. To the Marines who watched, there was no victory to claim. Their champion was gone. Their enemy had fallen. Both lay together in the ruin, equal in death, equal in myth. For a long time, no one spoke. Even chaplains lowered their croziers, words failing before the enormity of what had been witnessed. The duel had ended without triumph, without clear conquest. Yet in its ambiguity, it had become eternal. Predator and champion, two codes, two creeds, bound forever in one final strike. Neither defeated, both victorious. A myth born of ash and fire, whispered thereafter as the greatest hunt ever fought. The battlefield smoldered like a wound carved into the planet's flesh. The fires had begun to fade, leaving only embers that glowed faintly in the ash. Amidst the ruin, the Astartes gathered. Their armor bore the scars of orbital fire, alien claws, and endless war, but they stood as statues of faith, unbroken. At the center lay their champion. His relic armor was split and blackened, his storm shield cracked in half, his chainsword locked in the ribcage of the slain Xenos. He had fallen with his weapon buried in the enemy, his final breath spent in defiance. To the Marines, it was not a death but a testament. The chaplains surrounded him, their Crozius Arcanum planted like altars in the ash. Voices rose in solemn hymn, verses echoing across the cratered ruins. Through blood, through flame, through death, the Emperor endures. Their chants rolled like thunder, binding grief into unity. Each Marine bowed his head as purity seals were affixed anew to the champion's broken armor, each fragment kissed with fire to consecrate the sacrifice. The predator's body, or what remained of it, was gathered in silence. Its torso was shattered, its runes smeared in black ichor, its mandibles cracked in death. Some Marines spat curses upon it, denouncing it as blasphemous Xenos filth. Others gazed upon it with a reluctant respect, acknowledging the sheer fury and cunning it had wielded. The librarians observed with colder eyes, marking details into codices, questioning its strange resonance in the warp, speculating whether this creature was some hidden horror, yet unnamed in imperial records. Pieces of alien armor were taken as relics, not as trophies of triumph, but as reminders. They would hang in the chaplain's halls as warnings. Even the greatest can bleed. The champion's body was borne aloft by his brothers, carried not as fallen flesh, but as sacred relic. His remains would be entombed within the chapter's fortress monastery, his name engraved alongside martyrs of 1,000 campaigns. His duel was already spoken of not as a death, but as a victory, the Emperor's chosen meeting the galaxy's deadliest hunter, and proving that humanity's faith could never falter. In whispered sermons, Chaplains framed the duel as divine trial. "The Emperor tested us," one intoned. "He sent the beast to weigh our faith. And in the death of our brother, in his sacrifice, we have prevailed. The Xenos is ash, but the Imperium endures." Among the Marines, grief mingled with pride. They had lost their champion, but his story would be carried on in every prayer, every oath, every strike upon the battlefield to come. His sacrifice was not the end. It was the beginning of a tale they would speak for generations, a parable of vigilance. The Imperium would call it victory, not because the alien had been slain, for its savagery had been undeniable, but because the Emperor's light had shone brighter. Humanity had endured the trial of the hunter, and to endure was to triumph. In the ashes of ruin, one truth remained: even gods must be vigilant, for the shadows always wait. Beyond the ruins of the shrine world, far beyond the Imperium's reach, word of the fallen hunter drifted across the void. Fragments of its ship, recovered by chance or by design, carried records of the hunt. Its mask, shattered, scarred by both fire and blade, pulsed with recordings, trophies of sound and image that told the tale of the final duel. Plasma echoes, chainsword roars, the roar of fire itself, all stored in the warrior's memory. When the signals reached the Predator homeworld, the clans gathered. Vast halls of bone and steel, lit by pyres of eternal flame, became sanctuaries for remembrance. Hunters old and young stood in circles, mandibles flaring as they listened to the tale. The images replayed upon walls carved with runes of conquest, the Marine champion striding forth with a storm shield raised, the hunter unmasked and scarred, runes carved into its flesh, the circle of fire closing around them both. Every strike, every roar, every blow was studied in reverence. This was not a failure. This was not shameful. This was perfection. Among the Yautja, the creed was simple. The hunt was greater than survival. To fall in battle against the unkillable, to test one's blades against gods, was the pinnacle of honor. No greater prey could exist than those who would not yield even to death. The hunter had found such prey, and it had not turned away. Elders rose from their thrones, voices rasping with pride. This one carved runes into its flesh before the end. It vowed not to survive, but to ascend. And so it has. It stands forever among the greatest of our kind. Around them, younger hunters roared their agreement. They struck their chests with fists, mandibles wide, weapons raised toward the flames. At that moment, they were no longer listening to a story. They were participating in a ritual. The hunter's final duel became part of their blood, etched into memory as surely as any scar. In great halls, the skulls of 1,000 beasts stared down from walls. Yet beside them, a new sigil was carved. Not a skull, but the shape of a storm shield etched in black stone marked with blood. It did not represent prey taken, but prey encountered, prey that proved itself untouchable, prey worthy of eternal pursuit. To honor the duel, every hunter of the clan painted the sigil upon their armor before their next hunt, a vow to remember the one who had walked into fire and roared until the end. Stories spread. Elders spoke of the champions of the Emperor, warriors clad in steel and faith who fought with fury beyond comprehension. No longer were they nameless aliens, they became a new category of prey, ranked higher than any Xenos, higher than any beast. The tale of the duel became a trial spoken to young hunters before their first rites. If you seek glory, seek prey like this. If you fall, you will not fall in shame. You will fall in fire, as he did, and rise in legend. The Predator's name, lost to outsiders, became immortal among its kind. Songs of clicks and growls echoed through long hunts recounting its courage. Its mask, scarred and blackened, was displayed in the central hall, a relic not of death but of ascension. Warriors touched it before departing on hunts, taking with them a spark of its legend. Some whispered that the duel had opened new possibilities, that if such prey existed in the galaxy, then there must be more. Not just beasts, not just soldiers, but warriors of faith, warriors who carried gods within their bones. Such prey was the future of the hunt. Such prey was destiny. Thus, the hunter's death was not an ending. It was the beginning. Its story would be retold for centuries across stars, carved into armor, sung by warriors on the eve of their trials. To the Imperium, it had been a Xenos slain. To the Yautja, it was a god hunt, and the proof that the creed was true. The hunt was eternal, and to hunt gods was the highest honor. In the end, fire consumed the battlefield until it was indistinguishable from the void itself. Ash and silence draped over the ruins where predator and champion had fallen. The world was scarred, but the story endured, carried outward like embers on a cosmic wind. Among the Imperium, the tale became parable. Chaplains preached of the champion's defiance, describing the duel as proof that even in the face of monsters beyond mortal reckoning, faith does not waver. It was retold in cathedrals, painted in murals, sung in battle hymns, a nameless alien slain by the Emperor's chosen. And yet, within whispered corners of the chapter's fortress, some admitted the truth. The duel had ended in silence, not triumph. The Xenos had not yielded. The champion had not survived. Both had died, and in that truth, vigilance was demanded. Among the Yotia, the tale was carved into their bones, sung in rituals, passed from elder to young. It was not a death, but an ascension, a hunter who found prey beyond measure and dared to strike, knowing death would be the cost. His name was lost, but his creed was eternal. To hunt gods was not folly, it was the highest honor. And so, the galaxy held two truths, that humanity had endured, and that the hunter had fulfilled its creed. Two truths, mutually exclusive yet equally unshakable. Both sides claimed meaning. Neither side claimed victory. In time, the story drifted beyond the bounds of either culture. It became a myth whispered in void stations and hive-world bars, a rumor of a battle where gods and monsters bled together. Some claimed the predator had survived, limping into the shadows to hunt again. Others swore the champion had risen from his tomb, a living saint returned to the battlefield. Some insisted that both warriors still fought, locked in eternal combat, their duel echoing in the warp itself. There was no proof, no certainty, only the story. And perhaps that was the point. For in the grim darkness of the far future, survival is fleeting, but legends endure. The Imperium would paint the tale as vigilance. The Yachtja would carve it as glory. And the galaxy at large would remember it as something stranger, something greater, a moment when two codes, two worlds, met and neither bent. The hunt had not ended with death. It had not ended at all. It had become eternal.